This is an article that I saw earlier today, early, early yesterday, but I haven't got round to reading it properly until now. In fact, I haven't even read it properly myself. So it's about whether our lives really do flash before us before we die. And scientists recorded the brain activity of an 87-year-old man at the moment he died, revealing a rapid memory retrieval process. And what does that mean? This is the Mail article. It begins. What happens in the brain as we die has been a source of mystery for centuries, but a new study suggests our lives really do flash before our eyes in our final moments. Neuroscientists inadvertently recorded a dying brain while they were using electroencephalography, EEG, to detect and treat seizures in an 87-year-old man, and he suffered a cardiac arrest. It was the first time ever that scientists had recorded the activity of a dying human brain, according to the team. Rhythmic brain wave patterns were observed to be similar to those occurring during memory retrieval, as well as dreaming and meditation. This supports a theory known as life recall, that we relive our entire life in the space of seconds, like a flash of lightning just prior to death. In fact, the brain may remain active and coordinated during and after the transition to death, and may even be programmed to orchestrate the whole ordeal, according to the researchers. And this is my bit. So if you see your life as a film, then you know those old movie projectors when they get to the end of the reel and it just sort of flops because it obviously keeps winding in to get to the end. So if you see your life as a kind of reel of film, and you imagine that when it ends, you get a kind of a very quick pull of your life as it winds back to the beginning, something like that, some analogy like that. So if the analogy holds, then it would make sense about your life flashing before your eyes. A patient who is unnamed was admitted to the Vancouver General Hospital in British Columbia where neurosurgeon Dr. Ajmal Zemma was working at the time. The researchers took EEG recordings from his brain before he eventually underwent a fatal cardiac arrest. EEG is a method of recording electrical activity of the brain that involves electrodes placed along the scalp. We measured 900 seconds of brain activity around the time of death and set a specific focus to investigate what happened in the 30 seconds before and after the heart stopped beating, said Dr. Zemma, now based at the University of Louisville, Kentucky. Just before and after the heart stopped working, we saw changes in a specific band of neural oscillations, so-called gamma oscillations, but also in others such as delta, theta, alpha, and beta oscillations. Brain oscillations. more commonly known as brain waves, are patterns of rhythmic brain activity normally present in human brains. The different types of oscillations, including gamma, are involved in high cognitive functions such as concentrating, dreaming, meditation, memory retrieval, information processing, and conscious perception, just like those associated with memory flashbacks. Through generating oscillations involved in memory retrieval, the brain may be playing a last recall of important life events before we die, similar to the ones reported in near-death experiences. People say that everything slows down. And when they talk about oscillations, I suppose we're supposed to think of an oscillating fan, and it oscillates, I suppose, in order to, well, find the right information, I suppose. These findings challenge our understanding of when exactly life ends and generate important subsequent questions, such as those related to the timing of organ donation. Oh dear. Yes, it seems that if we don't opt out, our organs will just be seized and used. While this study is the first of its kind to measure live brain activity during the process of dying in humans, similar changes in gamma oscillations have been previously observed in rats kept in controlled environments. This means it is possible that during death, the brain organizes and executes a biological response that could be conserved across species. Yes, I suppose it could make sense that we have a kind of summary of our lives before we, go to meet our maker. So, we are reminded again of, the important bits of our lives for which we will have to give an account to our maker if he exists and will be asking us to do. These measurements are, however, based on a single case and stem from the brain of a patient who had suffered injury, seizures, and swelling. This complicates the interpretation of the data, although Dr. Zemmer said he hopes to investigate more cases in future. As a neurosurgeon, I deal with loss at times. It's indescribably difficult to deliver the news of death to distraught family members. He said, well, I'm sure doctors would have some training about how to break the news. Sometimes we may learn from this research. Something we may learn from this research is, although our loved ones have their eyes closed and are ready to leave us to rest, their brains may be replaying some of the nicest moments they experienced in their lives. Yes, I remember we are told that people, apparently the hearing is the last to go. So try not to talk about the person, the deceased person, or the person you think deceased, in case they hear you and get upset, something like that. So yeah, I rather like this story. The freak says fake news or speculation. Well, he says he's got all this EEG stuff. I'll give you the link in case you're interested. So yeah, it would make sense that you go from the beginning to the end, and then the whole thing would be kind of sort of ripped back very quickly, to kind of go back to the beginning or something. So yeah, well, it makes sense. So I hope I'm not seeming a little morbid. I I guess I like to think about these things so that we are prepared, and considering such matters, I think helps us prepare. And what it says is that all species have this particular brain function. I mean, if you look at it, you'll see some complicated diagram and very scientific explanations. So I don't really know. I mean, there's actually a picture of um, the brain activity of this 87-year-old male epilepsy patient while he was dying from a heart attack. So the pictured are CT scans of the patient whose identity was not enclosed. A and B shows effects of subdural hematoma. Hematoma, a serious condition where blood collects between the skull and the surface of the brain, with larger mass effect on the left side. C and D show the same scan sequences from decompressive craniotomy, a surgery to treat the condition. Ugh. Okay, and there's a bit that says the life recall theory. Imagine reliving your entire life in the space of seconds. Like a flash of lightning, you are outside of your body, watching memorable moments you lived through. This process, known as life recall, can be similar to what it's like to have a near death experience. What happens inside your brain during these experiences and after death are questions that have puzzled neuroscientists for centuries. So, I mean, I see it as analogous to a film, which has a beginning and the end, and you get to the end, um, and then there's a program process of rewinding it, and the rewinding would be really quick, right? It would be kind of in reverse, but the same speed because that would be intolerable. Although there is a play that used this device. I think it was a Harold Pinter pet play, um, and the film started at the end and worked towards the beginning. So it was just a kind of narrative novelty. And I suppose, if it's all programmed, it's, well, programmed for a purpose. And there can be no other purpose than to make us have a final review of our lives so we can explain ourselves. Yes, how to explain ourselves, to give an account like, well, what were you doing? What was your life? What did you do? What purpose was being served with your life? And then, well, then it would be a kind of oral examination. And, if you can't really explain yourself, then I don't know, are you kind of made to repeat the lesson or something? There's a surah that describes a person as sent. Is it something to do with Muhammad going to the moon or something? Is that the one? Is that the cutting of the moon in half kind of thing? I'm getting words wrong. I get words wrong all the time. Young people get words wrong all the time. Mind you, I think a lot of people, I don't think they're quite there. They don't make much sense, really. I listen to the radio and I think these people, they don't make much sense, really. Do I have anything more to say about brain activity? Well, okay, so let's say this is programmed, and we get a kind of review of the year. At the end of the year before the new year is, we get reviews of the day of the year, and well, obviously it's there to help us remember what happened in the year, and obviously this process, this kind of memory retrieval thing, might be something to help us, remember our lives, and just to give us a quick reminder, because we will have to give an account of our lives when we meet our maker. And we could perhaps speculate on the interview process, I suppose. Imagine if I were there to ask you questions about your life and say to Joe, perhaps, well, what did you do? What did you do? The ugly truth. I could say the ugly truth. What about sex? Nobody's dying. Well, I mean, in the sense that, well, nobody's imminently about to die, but I suppose you could say that the moment we are born, we begin to die. And I was just talking about how we are to give an account of ourselves. So, I mean, obviously, it helps if you kind of review your life every so often. And oh, this reminds me that Confucius was what we were told when we were learning about Confucius, that he reviewed every day before he went to bed. He um, well, see if he did anything wrong. He would do a review of the day, and he would feel bad if he did anything incorrect, and that was kind of what he did as a matter of habit. Well, I haven't really read about that after school, after primary school. I don't know. Maybe there's some record of it in English. Yes, if you can imagine your your afterlife being, rather rigorous oral examination. I don't even know if I can find it. Oh, tryworldhistory.org. Of course, a lot of things would be attributed to him and may not even have been said by him. But I thought it was a good idea, really, to sort of, remember to review your day and feel bad if you've done something bad. It's like a kind of day of atonement every day instead of every year. Oh, I can't. It's too late now for me to skim read. I can't even do that. I'm too tired. Yes, it's called writing a diary. Not everyone does that though, because we're lazy, aren't we? Or maybe we do kind of write a diary in in our social media postings, because what is Facebook but a um well but a public diary? What is a blog but a public diary of one thing or another? So perhaps we have more opportunity to express ourselves in writing, but some of us may not be doing it to the best effect if we just write about rubbish. I think I have empathy for a lot of people, a lot of confused, neurotic, mentally ill, morally compromised, intellectually dishonest people, because I can understand why they might be behaving in that terrible way, because they are confused. I was talking earlier to someone about, principle. I mean, I've been going on about that in the past few days, saying that if you don't have principles, you will be utterly at sea, and you will be guided only by your emotions, your moods, your whims, and because of that, you will have no purpose. So, once you decide that you're going to lead your life in a particular way because you want to do a particular thing, then it kind of works out. So you can see that religious people, it's like whether they really believe in it or not, they'll kind of have this idea that, well, they mustn't be too evil, and they ought to find somebody to marry them and have children with, and try not to break too many laws in the process, not kill anybody or steal anything or commit too many sexual offenses. And then, but yeah, the thing is, once you marry, it's like you're pretty much stuck. You have this thing that you're supposed to do with this other person of the opposite sex, and whether you succeed or not, it will in some way impact on you. Either as a disappointment if you never had children, or if you had children and they were disappointing, or you had children and they were good. Yeah, So the fact that people who come from a background um, that sanctifies, that reveres the practice of marriage will have a more purposeful life than somebody who doesn't. Because in a way your life is kind of narrowed when, once you do this thing, once you embark on this enterprise of rearing the next generation. My principle, I would say, is to, yeah, it used to be enjoy myself, and then I thought, well, that seems a bit shallow, really. And I think eventually you find a purpose, whatever it is. And it helps, I suppose, that I've always been interested in politics, and I suppose I look around and see things that are, well, I see simple problems that are not solved, and when I make inquiries, I see that they are neurotic. These people who should be doing the right thing and they can't do it, and you wonder why. Why don't they just do the obvious thing to solve their problem? And then you realize that in their minds is a Gordian knot of sin, really, of sin and neurosis, and denial and anger and pride and envy and all kinds of strange things that, of course, they would never admit to themselves because, well, most people would not acknowledge that they are envious, because to say that you are envious is to acknowledge that you are inferior. What does this mean for anti Semites, though? Yeah, I just read an article, well, an email with a link to an article about anti Semitism and why people are like that. And you think, is it envy? But, do these people, okay, do these anti Semites who hate Jews, do they really envy Jews? I mean, it's like, well, if you really envy Jews, then you can just, well, go and become one. Yet they don't. So is it similar to being a bad student, a lazy and bad student, wishing that they were a good and studious student, but not wanting to be a studious or good student? It's like they want these things, but they don't want to do the stuff that they need to do to get that way. And so they, I guess they just cheat, and then they complain that they're not doing as well as they should, and they blame the Jews. Of course, they blame the Jews. Joe is obsessed by me. I don't mind. I find it rather flattering that he always sort of pops up, in a Dr. Mengele way. But his insults are more, well, more literate, shall we say. I don't know. Some men still find me attractive. I don't know. It's quite sweet, really. I mean, I don't expect it, but it's and when it happens, it's quite flattering. So I don't mind. I don't mind. Hello, Howard. Now, where was I? Okay, I was talking about death and meeting our maker, and what sort of interview that would be. So yeah, we were talking about Jews and how anti-Semites might envy them, and I said, well, don't envy them. Just become one. You can convert, and then, they don't want to do that, and so it's like a bad, lazy student wanting to be a good student but refusing to study. So, too bad you can't be like them because you don't want to put in the work to be like them. So the point of Jews is really to annoy Gentiles, basically. I mean, and of course the point of Gentiles is to annoy Jews. The bad Jews get annoyed by Gentiles, and the good Jews are not so annoyed, or the Gentiles might annoy them, but they wouldn't actually be annoyed. They would kind of accept the situation. So a lot of the problems we have is sort of internal. It's like we can choose to accept the situation that we're not Jews, but we shouldn't envy them. In the same way that we're not royalty, right? We're not royalty, and we shouldn't envy royalty because deep down we don't want to live like them, do we? To live in a fishbowl, and particularly now, you can't even have sex with a 17-year-old female, even when it's legal for the rest of the country, and you can't do it without having to pay millions of pounds to a retired American prostitute. What's going on? What's so enviable about that? So in the end, I think we can only live our own lives. We've gotten used to our lives. It's like, I'm sure a lot of people can might tap us on the shoulder and say, "Oi, how can you live like that?" And it's like, yeah, well, I've been doing it for a while. I'm used to it, and I don't think I lead the best life, but I'm used to it now, and I couldn't imagine living anybody else's life. And I think, when you get there, I think you've grown into your own skin, shall we say. And what about, the wrong things were done? I think, you see, here, the Jews have a certain advantage in that they have this thing called the Day of Atonement every year. And so, okay, maybe some of them don't take I don't take it seriously, but they're supposed to apologize to each other. I'm sorry I've wronged you, and they do that, and I think it's rather sweet. And even if you didn't really mean it, you kind of think, well, you should apologize. I bet you did your husband, your wife, your children, your parents wrong, and everybody feels a bit kind of vindicated when they've apologized and received apologies. I think it's quite a nice ritual. I rather like that. Although I'm sure there will be a few Jews who say, "But I don't forgive you. I could never forgive you for what you did to me. I will." And then they won't be able to say that, and they'll be seething, perhaps. And the other thing that I find interesting about what they do is this thing called kol nidre, which is um, their or they repeat it in Aramaic, and it's basically saying that they declare expired all the promises that they made to God, and I think that's an excellent thing to do, because it will mean that you can renew them. Of course, if you have to, give them up, you can always renew them, and then you'll have to think about, well, which ones you are glad came to an end automatically, and which ones you want to renew. So that helps them, think more carefully about their lives and the decisions that they've had to make. And you think Christianity, it's so stupid, and no wonder the civilization of the post-Christian is crashing and burning because they're so stupid, and Christianity has been basically replaced by liberalism, which is really, really, really stupid now. Hello, Landmouse. Yeah, I'll debate it with this Mormon that you want me to debate with. Mormon Shaggy, I don't know. Well, I'll have a look at it. I mean, in principle, I'm prepared to debate people. And so, if Jews have, moved ahead of Christians or the post-Christian, there's a reason for it, because their religion is not so stupid, and it requires them to think about these things. And not all these Jewish festivals, which I have followed over the years, and they remind Jews of themselves and their history, and the length of their history, and I think it would tend to make them wiser than believing in the nonsense that Jesus is God and was born of a virgin, and things like that. Joe, it's not quite fair that I only want to annoy British people. I am trying to help them, and I know they're in a bad way, and now, particular British people I'm quite fond of and anxious about. So, and as for Australians and New Zealanders and Canadians and Americans, they're also a product of the British Empire, and as am I. Yeah, so Landmass, maybe I'll have a look at him now, even. Yeah, and talking about Jews, this thing I said about them recently, which is that they don't really have an enviable afterlife because of their 36 capital offences. And you think it's actually quite clever of God to put Jews in this position. It's like, yeah, you're the chosen people because you're just more punished for things that aren't even a sin for Gentiles, and then you're here to set standards and teach them their right laws, and oh, but you haven't been doing it. Oh dear, and you've clocked up quite a few death penalties in one little Jewish lifetime, and obviously no Gentile is going to execute you, but they'll be all waiting for you in the afterlife, and the only way you can escape it is to convert to Islam, which has a very seductive heaven and a very scary hell, and it's from the same God. So in a way, the Torah is nudging Jews into Islam just by the very existence of the 36 capital punishments, and it's really quite an astonishingly clever system, isn't it? So if God exists, he would oh, it would be a controlled experiment, obviously. So there have been analogies of, well, is God still in the building? Has he left the building? He's not in his lab. Has he just gone out to the loo? Or maybe he's got himself a cup of tea. He's gone out to lunch. What? But the thing is, nothing too much will go wrong because it's almost like it's a controlled experiment where you can nothing too much will go wrong, and there's already a system in it when if you choose this thing, something will happen and whatever. I can't really explain. I suppose the closest you can think of it is those okay. Years ago, I went to this kind of pet supermarket, and they were selling rats, white rats, and they they told you not to buy two of the same sex, so you don't get lots of little rats, and you have this sort of tunnel system that basically goes all over the place, and obviously they need to have their space to run, and all these sort of little things for them to play with within this sort of tunnel system, and water and food and stuff, and perhaps our lives are a bit like that, and of course the board game's called the game of life, and it's like if you become a graduate, whatever, different. So yeah, it's something to consider how we lead our lives, and crossroads and whatever. I guess I'm rambling a bit now, and but there are 10 of you now. You see, Joe is lying about me again. I've never asked anyone to convert to Islam. I know he's totally triggered by it, but I've never. I wish he wouldn't tell lies. You don't do yourself any credit by telling lies about me. Now, Joe, thank you for giving me the opportunity of explaining myself again, because clearly you didn't get it about whether this omnipotent, omniscient God is actually in the room. But, things won't go that badly wrong because there is already a system, okay, of rewards and punishments. So, it's like him saying, no idolatry and no blasphemy. And people break the rules, of course, because rules are made to be broken. And obviously he knew that. And he's created a system in which a sin is its own punishment. So obviously, it doesn't happen immediately. It just builds up the toxicity of the idolatry, because people don't get it that something's wrong. I mean, you say don't do it, and you think, oh, I've done it, and I'm okay. I'm gonna do it some more, which is kind of what most people do when they think they've gotten away with. I don't know. I mean, a good example would be serial killing. So, you're the serial killer, and you start with 1 and 2 and 3, and you get away with it, and you think, I'll keep doing it. It's great fun. And then until obviously, the more you do it, the more you're going to get caught. And it's the same with anything else, stealing, sexual offences, and all the other things. And eventually it'll catch up on you. And I guess that's what is meant by the sin being its own punishment. I never said people would be forced to convert to Islam because of the primacy of chapter 2, verse 256 of the Quran that guarantees freedom of belief. But obviously, it's an option to convert if you want to. And, I know, Joe, you're an Islamophobe, and, I have no intention of forcing you to convert, but your descendants, if any, may wish to convert, and in 2 or 3 generations you won't be around to mind, and they may wish to convert or not convert. But, obviously, I am making it more likely for them to convert, and what's wrong with that if it's the best available religion around? You see, your Islamophobia will never let you go let go of the fact that you hate Islam, and that's why you have to make up lies about me. And I'm saying, if it is the best religion around, then you shouldn't object to it. Fif- 1,500 years for the Christian Reformation? I'm sure it didn't take that long. I mean, the wars of the Reformation started in the 1500s, didn't it? So in the UK, it ended in I'd say about 150 years, 125 for the Protestant succession to be secure. Because, at the beginning it was, we're Anglican, oh no, we're Catholic again, and we're Anglican, but the king's being a bit too Catholic, oh dear, we've cut off his head. So no, I didn't say they would be forced to convert. No, I'm saying they would probably lose their hatred of Islam. They would think, oh, it seems to be the mainstream thing to do. Why not? Or your children would just want to, do it of their own accord. But obviously, if secular Quranism were adopted, it would be treated like there being a First Amendment, and we can use the model of the Americans to make the point that secular Quranism comes with the First Amendment. I mean, that's a kind of, it's like putting on gift wrap or a ribbon on the present that you have just wrapped. Closet Canadian, I don't know. Well, whatever I say, Joe will lie about it and twist it, but I suppose I have to praise his consistency in being his usual self, being crazed with hatred, and being quite relentless about it. Oh, here we go again, the jizya. No, the jizya will be used as a conditional tribute that would only be imposed on conquered nations. But there will be a flat rate income tax of 20% for citizens of the secular Quranist state. And I think I've said all I wanted to say. Thank you all for coming. I hope most of it made sense. I should sum up the brain activity of a dying man, and this idea of your life flashing past you. It can be analogous to a reel of film going to the end and being very quickly rewound to the beginning, so that the liver of that life will have a review of their life, so their memory will be refreshed when they have to give an account of themselves in the afterlife, so that they will be judged and decide whether they pass their exam, and if they did, they'd go to the nicer place. Well, it's surprisingly pleasant, my life. It may not be to everyone's taste, but it's a surprisingly intellectually rich life. And socially, it's not too bad, really. All right. Thank you all again for coming by, and I'll talk to you again very soon, no doubt.